Alright, this is the first manhwa or webtoon, I guess, that I'm gonna cover in this little series of just uploading a whole bunch of stuff that I've randomly read and reviewing it. It's a Hero Killer. Oh, what was it? Wait, not that one. Just kidding. No, it's not Hero Killer from My Hero Academia or whatever, the Stain. No, it's this series, Hero Killer. So if you haven't seen any of the other videos I did, well, the basic thing I'm going to do here is just give you a straight up initial rating, and then I'll, go a little more in depth into what I think about the series. So, if you want to know if you should read it or not, you can just go off the basic rating, and then, you'll have an idea of what I think. But if you want to know a little bit more before you go in, then you can watch the rest of the video. I'm not going to go into any spoilers or anything, I would say, throughout the video, but I'm going to go a little more in depth than just a number. So, if I had to rate this, I'm thinking either a 7 or an 8. Now, here's what I'll say. I don't know how often you read webtoons and manhwa and all that. Something that is common is a little bit of inconsistency in drawing. Now, this one I think is pretty good, but certain elements of it, you can kind of see a little bit of inconsistency with the drawing. And it still looks fine, but I would say there are consistency problems also in terms of aesthetics and, how characters look, things like that. Some of the more this is my thing. A lot of the less prominent characters are pretty appealing visually. A lot of the really prominent characters are kind of generic or basic, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, but I can't give it a whole bunch of props there. So what I would say overall, art-wise, pretty solid. Story-wise, pretty basic. Not incredible. It's all right. I think it's a fun series, but I don't necessarily think that the story's the carry. I think there are elements of the story I like, but a lot of it's pretty much I've seen it before, is what I'm trying to say. It's not breaking new ground, which is not bad. Like, I mean, it does everything it wants to do well, but I'm just saying I can't give it props for breaking new ground. So again, this is why I'm kind of leaning toward like a 7 or an 8, because the art's really good, but it's not perfect, and the story is done well, but it's not necessarily unique. I think there are unique elements, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't go crazy. Also, when I see like a story about superpowers, I expect them to be, well, I mean, I don't know, I expect some creativity. They're not, I don't know. I don't know if I'm just being harsh, but I feel like there's not like a ton of them in this series where I was like, whoa, that's so cool, or like, that's, so different. Like, of course they're visually appealing, like they do them in a cool way, but they're not like super unique abilities. Like, a lot of them are pretty understandable, or you've seen them before. Again, but I think this problem mainly happens with main characters. Like, main characters, they're like, oh, you're going to have, teleportation, or you'll be a dragon, or whatever. And then, like, a side character will have, like, the weird power, like, I turn into a chicken and, shoot eggs. So I think that's, it's cool that they have those powers, but it would be nice if, the main players were a bit more, I don't know, unique in their abilities, and we could see more creative, usage, like, of abilities and whatnot. I don't know. So I think all of that kind of leans me toward a 7 or an 8. I'll probably go with an 8, right? It does everything it wants to do well, and I think it is enjoyable. It's just it doesn't do anything where I'm like, wow, I've never seen that before, It's all stuff that I think is cool. It's not doing anything that like is blowing my mind or anything. Like, I've seen it. I don't know, maybe I'm just, it's brain rot from reading like hundreds of manga and like, all that, but I've seen almost all this before. and just comics, like a lot of it, you know, you've seen it before. If you've read some comics and you read some manga, you'd probably have seen almost anything you'll see in this at least once. But again, that's not necessarily bad. It just I can't say it's like a 9 or a 10. A 9 or a 10 to me is like when it starts to get unique, and I'm like, either the art is incredibly good, the story is super unique. Like, I mean, a 10 I think needs both, like incredible story, incredible art, like it needs everything. A 9 I think it needs at least a couple. This one to me, it does everything well, but it doesn't do anything that I would say is incredible. Again, though, I want to make this clear. I like it. It's just not, you know, it's not breaking new ground for me. Okay. Now I'm just gonna go into some general thoughts throughout it. Well, right off the rip, I will recommend this a little more for people because a problem that you often see is with like a webtoon or something is sometimes you either don't have enough, or like it's coming out too slowly, or it's slow in pacing. I will say this one is pretty good about pacing. There's a lot of it, and you know, you get to the point of each little section pretty quick. Of course, there's an overarching story, but you get like, you know, a lot of nice fights. You get a lot of like, you know, some, you know, decent development. I think most of the characters are a little kind of tropey and, you know, one note, but you still get development with the story, so I appreciate that. I think that definitely adds to me wanting to recommend it, because like, you know, it's nice to kind of get things going, right? Like, I don't have to, you know, read 30 chapters of them just sitting in their house to get to the chapter where they actually get something done. Like, it doesn't feel like there's a ton of, you know, stagnant time. Like, it's really moving. I will say there's a little bit of how do I, like, horny bait. They definitely sexualize characters at times. Not like explicitly, but you know, like they know what they're doing. To get like a teenager to be like, "Whoa!" Which I'm not, you know, whatever. You could do what you want, but I mean, that's not super for me. As far as a lot of characters go, I mean, you can kind of have like links to other characters and like, I don't know. I'll say this. I think one of the best aspects is probably world building. I really enjoy, you know, seeing different areas that they go to, like hearing different like ratings of like, oh, this, you know, this is like the person that ruled this district and blah blah blah, right? That's pretty cool. I think really the only thing that stands out to me as a downside with this series is how the characters are a little bit, I don't know, they're just, a lot of the major characters, like I said, are really just not, they're not doing anything groundbreaking for me. Like, I've seen like almost all the abilities before. Like the main character, I'm not spoiling anything here, but the main character's ability is basically just copying other abilities, which is, it's just not that unique. I don't know. It's like, really? And then like, oh, this character has the power of like, you know, basically the sun and is like Superman. It's just, you know, that's okay. And then like they're bad, and it's like, okay, well, this is kind of jumping on that trend of like The Boys and you know, like Invincible, things like that, where the superheroes are bad. But yeah, that's fine. Like, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But like, oh, it's like, oh, this guy's darkness and this one's the sun. It's like, well, okay, that's kind of basic. But that's fine. It's just, I don't know. The powers, I have to say, are a little. It's a little disappointing in terms of creativity. Visuals, great. I love how the series looks. I think it would be more fun if they did some, you know, they broke a little new ground, you know, by like spicing things up a bit. I don't know. It's like, oh, this guy's just super tough. This, you know, this one can teleport. This one can do that. It's like, I mean, I feel like they're trying to break new ground. Like they do some things where it's like, okay, that's different. But a lot of it I've seen. There's a girl that I would kind of akin her power to like Cheetah. I think it's Cheeto or something. I forget the hell. I don't know what her name was. The girl from Hunter Hunt. The not guy. I think it's actually a guy. It's one of the ants from Hunter Hunter that can teleport you to like a different space. Um, there's a lot of abilities like that, and I feel like none of them really stand out that much to me. I don't know. Um, I don't. I definitely think the abilities are kind of one of those points where I'm like, oh, this is a little disappointing. Just because I feel like they don't go crazy with it when I feel like it would be more fun to do something, wacky. Really, like, add some interesting abilities and make a guy powerful because he knows how to use his ability differently, right, than you would expect it to be used. I think that would be cool, but, what are you gonna do? Overall, in terms of story, I mean, the basic idea, the main character, well, I mean, their sister dies, and then they want to, avenge their sister, basically, by killing heroes. Hence the name Hero Killer. um, yeah, I mean, that's all well and fine. Again, it's a little generic, but it's done well enough. I don't have any issues with it. I will say some characters just feel like boss fights. Like there's not really like a build up. Like you'll just see a character show up for like, 5 minutes and they'll show up like 30 chapters later and then they get into a fight and it's like, okay, well, that was fine. I feel like if you watched One Piece or something, you could probably find everything you've seen in this series in terms of abilities and whatnot, but hey, that's okay. In terms of story, I mean, again, like I said, pacing's good. I think the plot points are relatively interesting. The main character's pretty fun, I would say. There's a pretty good mix of, like, serious and humorous moments. Doesn't necessarily stick to just one or the other. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I read like 160 chapters before this video because I think that was what was out at the time. And I mean, yeah, it was good. Like, I cannot complain about anything. But, I just want to make it clear, like, because it's not going, that extra step, I don't think I could put it higher than an 8. I think that's, that's about as far as I can go with it. I mean, like, I like the characters. I think, most of the, again, like, secondary characters and things like that have pretty fun designs. Some of the, like, concepts in the series were a little weird. I don't really want to go in spoiler territories, but I feel like some decisions made by particular characters I think were questionable. But again, I don't see any problems with the series. It does everything it wants to do well. It's just what it wants to do is very generic, so it can't really breach that 9 or 10 boundary for me. I'd love to put it there, but I feel like you really have to be outstanding to go that high. Yeah, I mean, I can't say there's much else to say. It's pretty typical in terms of, again, superhero media that's commonplace nowadays. The bad guys are actually, kind of good, and the good guys are actually bad, and blah blah blah, right? It has that to it. I'll be curious to see, how it turns out later on in the story. I think, maybe it seemed near the end of when I was reading it was picking up a little bit and, slightly moving away from the more generic qualities that it had prior, so I'm hopeful that it'll be a little bit better. I'll continue, reading, definitely, and I recommend this to anyone. I think it's a good series, but I think, as I've explained in the video, I think I have a fairly reasonable opinion in terms of like, why I would give it an 8 versus anything higher. Yeah, I think that's all I really have to say. If you have another series you want me to cover or something, let me know. And I'd appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. That'd be nice. I'll see you.